So interpersonal is between people. It's more one-on-one. We do a lot more with relationships, but it directly relates to the workplace and how you get along with people. Is that me? Is that the camera? Who's dinging? One has to go dance. We have all sorts of sound effects today, don't we? So right now, just in your head, and you can even think about this, I'll stay top.
That's good.
Should I go over here? You can even think about this or jot down a name. And what I want you to think about are people or places where you feel really comfortable and safe, but I don't mean physically safe. I mean, you don't worry about what you're saying or what you're doing. You're just free to be yourself. You don't overanalyze it. You don't get anxious before you go into it. And you don't leave the situation replaying it in your head and maybe feeling badly about it. Or the opposite, a situation where you do feel self-conscious. You do feel a little bit anxious. Like middle school is usually a place where we don't all feel comfortable. Does anyone remember that feeling? Junior high, all of a sudden it kicks in that everybody's kind of, what are you wearing, and how do you look, and does the opposite sex like you? And I always joke, does anyone have a good 8th grade picture?
I
Anyone?
did.
You do?
I did. Thank you.
Good, because everyone I know in 8th grade, we were like, you know, your body's ahead of your brain, and it's just awkward and weird. So I remember at that point starting to feel a little bit more aware of that whole popular thing and dating thing, and starting to think twice about things that I said or did or things that I wore. It starts earlier now though, doesn't it? Like I think kids are like clothes conscious and cool conscious at a much younger age. Okay, so anybody have one or the other you could tell me about? I'll give you an example for me. I always go next door or across the street on holidays because I love my across the street neighbor. She's my mom's age, but she's really more like a peer or a friend. And I love her family, and we always have such a good time. So before I have to go to my parents, I usually like a little dose of this, because I know when I go to my parents' house on Thanksgiving, I'm not going to feel as comfortable. They're just not as laid back. They're a little bit more critical. They always notice what you wear. And my husband said, your mother just keeps telling me how bad I look. What is that all about? You know, and she's trying to be sympathetic and say he looks tired. But you know how that, oh, you look so tired. You go, I look great. No. They notice everything. And they comment on everything. So for me, across the street with Gail, really fun. Heading over to my parents' house, I'm a little more wary before I go. Like I'll say to my kids, behave. You know, I'll be more nervous that they're going to embarrass me. I need one from you guys. Or it could be a person. Anybody have one of those friends, you like them, they're fun, but they give you digs? They're a competitive friend? Vivian, yes? What's it like? How would you describe it?
Certain things I'm like afraid to say around my friend because I feel like he's gonna judge me and something to say.
So you don't say whatever's on your mind, you're afraid to say certain things because he's going to judge you. Chantal?
I just have a friend that makes everything a competition. It's like we both got boyfriends at the same time, and then I got married, and like all of a sudden she was like trying to get her boyfriend to like propose to her, and it was just really awkward. So I just don't tell her
And you like her and
anything.
everything, but you probably don't say as much about your relationship in front of her, right?
No, not anything anymore. It's just gotten too much to where like everything, like school, everything is a competition. It's because like our families are so close that like they, like her dad will be like, why can't you be more like Chantel? And then my mom will be like, why can't you be more outgoing like Megan? So it's like, I don't know. We start to hate each other.
Yeah, you start to hate each other. Anybody else have a situation or a job or a person? Did you ever have a job where you just dreaded going?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it wasn't necessarily the work that you were doing? If it wasn't, like Mike, you nodded, both Mikes nodded, was it the work itself? Why did you dread going to that job?
Both, yeah.
What, both meaning what was the other
People
thing?
and what I do.
The people. And what about the people?
They're all, first of all, like 70 or older.
Okay, so you're not really common with that.
Nothing. I just kept to myself, and one guy would always like just tell me what to do. It was annoying.
He told you what to do. This is why you guys, I love you guys. You nail everything, okay? You're going to see as I go into this. The reasons that we're less comfortable and the reasons why we're more comfortable fall into the category of interpersonal communication. And this is what it is. They give categories of defensive and supportive behaviors. So I'm going to go through each of the categories and I'm going to talk about what you shouldn't do, which is probably what these people do to you that you're not comfortable with, and what you can do instead. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but basically Jack Gibb wrote this book in 1978. He was one of the first people to focus on organizational communication, which means the workplace. I'm not just talking about relationships at home here, or personal relationships. This translates into a whole lot of money. How does feeling good about your job and wanting to go to work and feeling comfortable at your job translate into profits for the company? What do you think?
You're more willing to do more.
You do more. You don't call in. They've proven you don't call in sick as much. You don't steal the pens or the office supplies as much. If you have 10 minutes, you'll try to get 10 things done. Whereas if you don't feel appreciated at the workplace or you feel like you're going to be criticized, you like slow it down a little bit. You only do 3 things, so you're not as productive. So he was a groundbreaking individual with his Tory approach, which has to do with trust. Like prior to this, we didn't really talk about trusting our coworkers. You know, trust was something you associated in your personal relationship. But it turns out that how many hours do you spend at a job? I mean, think about it when you're full-time.
A lot.
That's who you're with. And if you don't feel comfortable, if you feel like you're being constantly criticized, you're going to be uncomfortable, you're going to have higher turnover if you own the company, people are going to keep leaving. They're not going to stay. And then you have to retrain people. And it costs a lot of money. So as usual, once it came down to money, everybody got into it. Carlos.
At my old job, the GM, he was real cool with me, right? And like, he used to look out for me. So when he was there, I felt so comfortable working. I would just do me. But the assistant GM, he was a dick to me. Like, I got him in trouble before for something because he took away my overtime with the GM because the GM liked me or whatever. He was mad cool with me. And as soon as he took over, because the GM left, he fired me. He didn't like me at all. We would always bump heads because I would always challenge his authority. Like he would say something like, "Why this, you doing this," but and he would hate that.
Well, we'll talk about that because that can be challenging the authority could have made him defensive. But if he's in a position of power, he should have known better how to handle it. And that's why a lot of you are going to be bosses. You're going to be managers. You're going to have secretaries. You're going to have people who work for you. And you need to know how to talk to them and how to deal with them so that this doesn't happen. I had another kid in another class said, with one manager at a bar, he's so happy when that guy's working, and he's a completely different employee when the other manager is working.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He's 2 different people at the same job. So when I talk about a communication climate, what does climate remind you of when I say that?
The weather.
Like weather, temperature, the feeling of, oh, it's a nice day out. We live in a moderate climate. Okay, so a communication climate is the emotional tone of a situation or a relationship. Okay? And you have all of this, so hopefully you can just listen and take it in and then study from the notes. A positive communication climate is one in which people are focused on preserving your face. And when I say face, I mean your presenting self. Have you ever heard that phrase, saving face?
Mm-hmm.
See, in this class you have, in some of my other classes, they don't know what I mean. Derek, what does it mean?
More popular colloquialism would be covering your own ass. Basically.
Okay, all right. You don't want to be embarrassed. If our face is who we are, and somebody is critical or competitive or puts you down, then they're not trying to preserve your face. So it becomes a face-threatening climate, and that's where you'll have a higher level of defensiveness. In the face-saving climate, you don't think you're going to be embarrassed or anything, so you don't go in with your backup. You don't go in prepared and ready. Like, Carlos, you probably went in when that assistant manager was on, like, okay,
Yes.
I'm ready for battle here. But we do this all the time, and people in power sometimes make terrible mistakes because they think, well, I have the power. As a teacher, I had to evolve. When I was 26 years old and I started teaching here, most of my students, more than half, were adult students, which means they'd lived longer than me, they had kids, they were getting divorced, they knew more about life than I did. So I was a little bit more defensive just because I was insecure and I was new to teaching. So I was a lot stricter, and I don't have behavioral problems in the classroom. And younger teachers will say to me, what do you do when they do this and what do you do when they do that? I said, they don't do that anymore because you just have to be fair. I think students know when you like them and when you get them. But haven't you ever had one of those teachers who, that's it, it's my way or the highway, they seem unreasonable. And you can actually feel the tension in the classroom when that happens. Like that situation where I had where I put those kids on the spot during a group discussion, that was a defensive communication climate because you guys are nervous when you're performing. The day of the speeches, I really try to lighten it up because you can feel the tension, can't you, the first day? And it's because you're putting yourself on the line up there, okay? Mike, stand-up comedy, which is it?
High level, I don't know. High level defensiveness, definitely.
High level of defensiveness, right? Because one, I'm performing, I'm putting myself out there, I'm asking you to laugh and actually show me that I'm funny. Like, you guys have to laugh at me almost, unless, because I have the power. You don't. And also in comedy, there's this inherent idea that people can heckle you and they can yell at you when you're on the stage or boo you, even. So that's tough. That's tough. And you've got to be friendly and connect with them anyway. Very few comedians have gotten away with that whole insulting the audience thing. Some of them do, but...
No, I mean, I've been heckled with something. I never got booed, but I've been heckled.
yeah.
And you just gotta handle yourself,
You have to think on your feet.
Yeah.
And because you know it's coming, I bet you handle that very well. As opposed to getting mad at them.
I'm really good at improvising. Like, the speech up there that I gave, I was pretty much improvising, actually. Like, I had stuff on my note cards, but I barely read them, I just improv a lot.
But what happens if you were to go after somebody and you have to do?
What do you mean go after them, like on stage?
I mean,
or?
get into it with them. If you don't improv, if you don't laugh it off.
Like get mad instead of being funny.
Yeah.
I have my first stand-up every day that happened. And
Of course, because that's a natural reaction.
It's actually on YouTube. If you want to watch it, it's pretty bad.
Oh my gosh! Okay, maybe we'll do that. And we'll see a clip of a defensive.
Yeah.
But it escalated, right?
Yeah. And,
It escalates.
Yeah, and after it just wasn't good.
No, it doesn't. It didn't get what you wanted, probably, and it's a mess. But nonetheless, we keep doing this. We do this to people we work with. We do this to the people we love the most. Oh my God. The people closest to us, sometimes we do this to the most. Scary. Okay, so what Gibbs said is that every individual can alter a communication climate or a tone. They don't have to be the boss, they don't have to be the parent. All of us can individually do certain things to create either a positive or a negative communication climate. And don't ever underestimate your role in that. So, I'm going to go through each of these categories. There are 6. On the left are the don'ts, and on the right are the do's. Okay? This will become clearer. Why do we care about this? Why do I teach this? And we spend an entire week on this in Comm 102. Competent communicators. These are people who get what they want, and that doesn't mean money. Sometimes that means good marriages, healthy relationships, strong family connections, better health because they're able to communicate with other people so they don't have stress. Definitely people who know about these techniques are proven to be more happily married and also to be happier on their jobs because they don't act like they're powerless to influence the situation. And every class that I teach I consider to be a communication climate, and I work so hard on that because I think if we all want to be here, we're all going to learn. It became a decision for me between I think when I was younger, I was like, oh, if I'm soft, they'll walk all over me, and then my life will be hell, and I'll be giving makeup tests all the time, and as you mature, you get older, you learn what you're teaching, which is always a good idea, to actually practice what you preach. I started to realize, you know what, you don't have to beat people over the head with it. You guys know who the teacher is, and you know who the boss is. And I think fundamentally, when you know the relationship, you operate within those guidelines. It's only when people get heavy-handed that we start to feel like we have no power, no control, and then we start to get angry because we don't have power and control. You're smiling, Chantal.
Because it's true.
It's so true,
Yeah.
isn't it? And comm 102, I'm always saying, is empathy 101. Like, if you could just treat people the way you would like to be treated, you would probably automatically start to do a lot of these techniques that I'm going to give terminology to. The golden rule. All right. Evaluation versus description. Evaluation arouses defensiveness. Vivian, you just said. I don't say what I want to say because he judges what I say.
Yeah.
So evaluation is being judgmental. You language. You make me so angry. You're always late. You're such a loser. God, you're the most selfish person alive. You drive me crazy. We say these things all the time. Now, don't they in sports, unless I'm imagining this, didn't people used to scream you? Didn't they do that when there was a bad call?
No, he didn't.
Maybe they were screaming something else and I just don't know what it was. But it would, I don't know.
Maybe it was blue.
It wasn't a boo though. I thought they were like pointing at somebody and just everybody would go, you.
Maybe they're saying F you.
Yeah.
No, they were saying forget you. Because nobody ever says F you in songs. I thought that song was so great. I had no idea. I'd be like singing it. And then my son says, Mom, I think that's, F you. And I'm like, no, it isn't. Oh my God. And he goes, you're right. It probably isn't. He must have been laughing all the way home. Of course. I'm like, no, it isn't. It works better as forget you. It's got 2 syllables. I think it works better with the song. But I've never heard it the other way. Okay. When we feel that we're being judged and criticized, we feel defensive. The day you give your speech, it's all about being evaluated. That's why we're nervous and anxious. Description is the opposite. So we don't want to be evaluative. We want to use description. Keep the focus on yourself. Use I language. Describe what you see happening rather than labeling it as good or bad. And you can do this, but you have to practice. It's not going to come naturally. And your nonverbal counts here too. So instead of, you're always late, you don't care about anybody but yourself. Is that person going to go, oh, you're absolutely right, I don't care about anybody but myself? They're going to get angry. They're going to say, oh yeah, well you were late. Or you're late sometimes and I don't say anything. Get off my back. Why are you always trying to control me? It's going to go from there. If you say, I feel angry when you're late, you don't call, because I worry, and actually I'm up half the night with a knot in my stomach, thinking that you're dead in the road somewhere. You think they're going to go, oh yeah, well you're late too. No, they have to hear it a little bit differently, because who can you control? You can control yourself. So the only thing you can really talk about is how you feel. And if you describe what you see happening, it's without kind of putting it in the good box or the bad box, it opens the door to an actual conversation. Well, you shouldn't worry. You know that I go out with my friends until 4 in the morning, and I always go out with my friends until 4 in the morning, and nothing ever happens to me. And you say, well, what if you called me at 2 and texted me? I could do that. Okay. Maybe you get somewhere. I'm not saying it always works. I'm not trying to be like Pollyanna here, like, oh, do these magical things and you'll never have another fight again. But I had a student who arrived late the first week of class. I think I told you guys this story when we did I language. Now, the old me would have been like, look, in front of the whole class, I would say, look, if you can't get here on time, then you need to drop this class and take another class. It's disruptive and rude to everyone in here. That's the old me. Okay? And that person would have stayed in the class, but would have been mad at me, and would have probably, I've seen classes where one student can turn the entire class around, positively or negatively. And you see it because when they leave, the whole class changes. Oh, we might have Yeah, I'm not gonna get into it, but yeah, there were dynamics in here that were a little funky in the beginning. Do you remember?
No. I don't even remember the beginning of the
Because you don't listen to me. Because everybody's in la la land.
I do listen to
That
you.
kid. He's so annoying.
The kid that kept saying he had kids. The kid that
The
kept
one
saying
who
he
was-
had kids.
The one who was challenging me all the time with the texting and
Oh, Nick.
I have kids. They kept telling me his kids. And that's why he's
throwing down with me about
Dude, how old are
the...
you? Come on, man. Like, it was just
And you know what, you guys, I could feel it. I was up here and I could feel it. And I went back to the office and I said, you know what, this stinks, because this is a good group. And I've got one thing and it's making everybody weird, including me. Because I'm not gonna, you know, it's like the squeaky wheel gets the oil. You end up paying all your attention to this person who's being difficult. You know, and they're just not ready to be here. It's not even personal. They're just
It runs in his family.
Pardon?
It runs in his family.
Oh, really? You know him? He seemed like a very nice boy. It just wasn't ready to be here. Let me backpedal quickly. So what I said to that student who was late was I kept her after class, spoke to her privately. You want to have a fight? Call someone out in front of other people. You want to watch something get out of control? Because if you humiliate someone, even when they know they're wrong, they feel that they must save face. And they feel they must defend themselves. If it's one-on-one, they're much more likely to say, you're right. I said, I noticed you're having trouble getting it. Is there something going on that I should know about? Because now it's been like 3 times and I'm getting concerned that you're missing quizzes and that's going to affect your grade. And she said, I just finished my overnight job and I quit it and I'm going to be here on time and that's it and that's the end of it. And she was a wonderful student and everybody got along. But I'm telling you, I would have made that mistake in the early 90s. And that was my fault. Okay, second category is control versus problem orientation. Control, who said this? Someone over here said they always had to do it their way. The boss or somebody you worked with. Was that you, Mike? Okay. This is when somebody is basically saying it's my way or the highway. If you have a controlling parent, when you were a teenager, you probably started to feel furious because they were going to tell you what to do and when to do it and how to say it. I have a girlfriend whose husband is a little controlling, and she really, she gets her back up because he wants to know what she's doing, when she's doing it, why didn't she get this done? And when somebody's an adult and you're in a marriage, you really can't say, well, did you get your work done today? That people, Okay, so, I shared an office back in the prehistoric dinosaur times when we didn't have cell phones or voicemail here. It was 1991, 3 of us, 1 phone. It was not a rotary phone, it was a push button phone, but we had to share the phone. And I shared an office with a very nice but kind of cranky older guy and another woman. And he came in one day and he said, don't touch the phone for 2 hours, do you understand? Well, we're colleagues, we're equals. We both were like, oh. And he stormed out and I was like, who was that? And she's like, I'm 50 years old, he's not going to tell me whether I can use a phone. Like the 2 of us were like, Now, turned out his mom was in the hospital. I mean, if he was 70, she must have been, 100 or something. So you don't want to give people orders or directives in that way. You can actually do it in a nicer way. And you're still kind of telling them what to do, but it takes longer. The problem with all the do's and the things you should do is you have to think a little bit more and take a little bit of extra time to do them, but you should because the results are tremendous. You usually end up having to clean up more interpersonal messes by taking a shortcut and being rude than if you just took a little time beforehand and thought about what you were going to say. So a problem orientation is the opposite of being controlling, and it means like, we have this problem, how can we solve it together? I just said to you guys, do you want to do the lecture today? Or do you want to wait and leave today and do the... Give people choices when you can. Then they feel they have some sort of say in what is happening to them in their lives. So if he had come in and said, I'm expecting a really important call, is there a way to keep the phone open? Do you think we would have been like, oh, nobody tells me what to do? Oh, what's going on? mom's in the hospital again. Oh my God, fine, I'll use the office phone. In fact, I'm probably not even gonna use the phone, I've gotta go to class anyway.